Hi, I'm Nick Hague and I'm the host of the World's Greatest Business Thinkers podcast. And today I'm going to talk about customer satisfaction frameworks. It's said that marketing is the profitable satisfaction of customers' needs. Recognizing customers' needs and satisfying them is therefore critical to any business. I'm sure that no one would deny this, and yet customer experience and customer satisfaction scores are plateauing at the moment. What do you think is the reason for this? Is customer satisfaction not receiving the attention within companies that it used to?
Well, let's begin our discussion with what drives customer satisfaction. And we think it's expectations. So people do expect a certain level of service when you're buying from a company. And those elements of service have a cost. And I think the problem exists. Almost every CEO would say, yes, customer service is important, we're committed to it. But as we know, Nick, a lot of these CEOs or a lot of boards might get a bit nervous about the amount they're spending on customer satisfaction if profits are under pressure. And it's very easy to take away some of those costs, to remove the service desk, to have an answer phone instead of a receptionist answering because it's cheaper to do it technically. And yet expectations haven't changed. In fact, expectations are going up all the time. They're rising. And the reason they're rising is because people are getting fantastic customer service from certain sources. Not necessarily competitive to the ones that the businesses that we're thinking about. But if you can order from Amazon today and get a delivery tomorrow with no hassle, and it's easy to place the order, you begin to wonder why it takes 3 weeks to get a delivery from somebody else, and it's a hassle to place the order. So although Amazon isn't necessarily competing with your company, it nevertheless is setting an expectation that's very high, and these expectations are set all over by both small companies and large companies. Amazon in the States, it might be Chick-fil-A, it might be Nordstrom, it could be any large retailer or small retailer are setting these expectations. And the reason it isn't happening for a lot of companies is because there is a cost and the commitment isn't there. Commitment is the number one requirement that we need.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I think just building on that, I think the fact that maybe companies are operating in this complex, uncertain environment that we're in at the moment. Everything's profound change, and therefore, as a result, they may be, they're looking at short term, which doesn't work for customer satisfaction. It's about this consistency, as you say. Long term approach is needed, and I think also, you've talked of, the CEO there, and the fact that it comes from the top. Leadership has to build it, buy into it, and as you say, everyone would say that they're service orientated, but if the average tenure of a CEO is less than 5 years, then no wonder commitment sometimes wavers. New CEO comes in, wants to stamp their authority on doing something different, and so the cycle starts again. So it's about expectations, it's about the environment and the ecosystem that we're in, and it's the resulting impact of the fact that they're not driving through with this commitment within organizations too. What's the starting point for using customer satisfaction frameworks? Where should we begin?
Well, I'll just go back to a point you mentioned back there, Nick, which I think is critical to where we begin, is who within a company ought to own the customer satisfaction label, and we would like it to be the top of the company, the CEO. If we could say we begin with the CEO and they have the commitment, then we'd have won this battle that we're fighting. And very often the CEO has come from, maybe they have a finance background or a production background, or they've done an MBA somewhere, but they haven't necessarily come up through the customer route. A lot of CEOs don't often visit customers, so they don't actually know what's going on there, which means that it gets passed down the management hierarchy within an organization. So the starting point has to be to understand customers' needs, and it needs to be understood by the people who are committed to delivering the customer satisfaction. Now, this, of course, is never always straightforward because people's needs vary depending on where they are on the customer journey. So If you are new as a customer, a very new customer, before you've even done any business, then you might have needs about information on the products, information on the company, and that promotion and availability of perhaps some technical advice is going to be really important. Once you're onboarded and you started repeatedly buying, then it might be things like reliable delivery and technical service that become important. So your customer needs and your customer satisfaction are going to vary a bit depending on where you are on the customer journey.
Yeah.
And in order, what we like are frameworks, and in order to check how you're doing on this customer journey or customer satisfaction, delivering against customer satisfaction needs, you need measurements. And we have done, customer satisfaction measurements are usually numerical. So you and I, who spent our life carrying out customer satisfaction surveys, might determine a huge range of different elements of customer service that is required at the different parts of the customer journey. And we would contact customers and say, how would you rate this supplier on a scale from usually 1 to 10, but it could be 1 to 5 or whatever. And we would get them, if we could, and it takes a bit of time, this, to also rate some competitors, other suppliers. So we've got measures of what levels of customer satisfaction are, both for yourselves who have a company, but also the competitors that you're fighting against. So that's the starting point, to understand the needs and then to measure those satisfaction levels against the needs.
Yeah, and you mentioned customer journey mapping there. I remember years ago you told me about this particular book from Jan Carlson, CEO of SAS, Scandinavian Airlines. He wrote the book, The Moments of Truth, and it was about his life and how he turned around the airline SAS by focusing on these small interventions that affected the customer's journey across, how they checked in at the airline and from then on. And I think, I don't know whether he invented the customer journey mapping, but he talks of these moments of truth, these different points that can deliver potential pain or pleasure points. So again, so important to put ourselves in the shoes of customers and understand, how we can deliver against those.
And moments of truth can be very, very small. So Jan Carlson sort of recognised that when somebody's flying, there could be dozens and dozens of these moments of truth. I was reminded of this earlier this week when I went for a coffee with a mate into a little cafe in the town where I live. And we were trying a different cafe this time, and we went in there and ordered a couple of hot chocolates. And the guy who was serving it said, "What, hot chocolates on a day like this? You must be mad." And we felt quite belittled, really. We felt quite small. Of course, we are old guys wanting hot chocolates every time, but he put us off going back to that cafe because he pretty well said we weren't capable of choosing a beverage that's suitable for the day. It was only a small moment of truth, but it affected our likelihood of going back to that cafe. So moments of truth are important, and we might not get those as the 10 key elements that we're going to ask people to score on, but we need to be aware of those because they could well affect people's ability to do business, likelihood of doing business with us.
Yeah. You talked of metrics and scales and scores before, and I think therefore we need to talk about the Net Promoter Score, or NPS, because it gets so much attention. Can you talk us through this, how we should use it?
Well, you're very familiar with the Net Promoter Score. Probably nobody knows more about it than you, Nick. But this is the one measure, it was promoted, that any company needs to measure satisfaction. And it's based on a very simple question, which is, how likely would you be to recommend this company or this brand to a colleague or a friend on a scale from 0 to 10? And depending on the answer that's given, you work out the Net Promoter Score. So you have some people who give it a score of 9 or 10 out of 10. In other words, they think it's great. We call those promoters. And there are some people who will give it a score of 6 or below. And that's considered quite low when it comes to customer satisfaction. And those who give a score of 6 or below are thought of as detractors. So we subtract the proportion who gave it a 6 or below from those who gave it a 9 out of 10, and we're left with the net number of promoters. Those who gave us a score of 7 or 8, we ignore. They are passives or neutral. And what we have found is, although it's a simple question, it is a very good determinant of loyalty. So if you're getting a high net promoter score, and by that we mean that a score that might be over 50. I mean, the maximum is 100, but you're always going to have some people who don't give you 9 or 10 out of 10. So you're never going to get 100 for your NPS. A good score is over 50. But many companies, especially the utilities, are getting scores of 20 or below. And in addition to, of course, asking how likely would you be to recommend, we would also suggest one further question is, why did you say that? So you get a bit of an open-ended answer to why they gave that score, and that can be very revealing. So the NPS is a great measurement device, and it's used across companies. CEOs like it because they can go to the board and they can say, our net promoter score is whatever it is, and everybody knows what they're talking about. And especially they like to track it to see whether it's going up or going down.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it has its detractors around the concept as well, but it's a simple metric, and that's why it's used widely in consumer companies as well as B2B companies. I think the only watchword is that in terms of sample, when you're looking at B2B sectors, you do need at least 50 and probably 100 plus responses to stop that fluctuation when you're tracking responses over the course of time. But it's definitely, it first came to light through Fred Reichhold, The Ultimate Question. It's evolved since. In fact, I think his most recent book is Winning on Purpose, which is on the shelf behind me here. But it's definitely something that is worth asking in all your surveys. But of course, it's not the ultimate question. Do ask why you say that. And then there's other questions as well. You don't need to get into lots of detail, but satisfaction, ask overall satisfaction, ask satisfaction with the parts of the journey, as we've talked about, and maybe even likelihood to repurchase as well, and then correlate all those answers together to give you the picture of
Nick, you raised an important point there, and that is that if you were to ask 100 people that this question, the ultimate question, how likely would you be to recommend, probably 50, 60, 70% would give a score of 7 or 8. Because the company's okay. I can't say it's wonderful. I'm not going to give it a lousy score either, but it's okay. It's 7 or 8, which means that the numbers of people who you calculate from which you're calculating your net promoter score, if you've got 100 customers, might be less than 30. And if you've only got 30 people and you're measuring how many gave 9 or 10 and how many gave 6 or below, then the results can fly all over the place when you repeat it, because you haven't got the stability of a large number there. So you can only really use the NPS, the Net Promoter Score, if you have a substantial number of customers. Over 100, 200 would be great.
Yeah. What, in your view, are the things that determine customer satisfaction?
Well, if we go back to simple customer satisfaction surveys that we started talking about, we might say there are a dozen different factors that we're going to ask people to rate, to say how satisfied are you with this particular company on this particular issue. And crucially, as well as asking on those individual aspects, we would also, and what's your overall satisfaction with this company or this brand? And what we can do then is we can correlate, we can link the scores that are being given for the dozen or so individual aspects with the overall satisfaction and see if there's a correlation. Now, if there is a high correlation, we know that that's driving the overall satisfaction score. So what have we found when we've looked at these dozen elements each time? We've found that it's the soft factors, things like friendly service, ease of doing business, that actually drives overall satisfaction rather than those harder factors such as the price of the product or even the quality of the product. Those are seen as being givens, basics, table stakes. And the things, therefore, that drive customer satisfaction are likely to be the soft issues. The things that are intangible, the brand could well be one of those. So they're the things that drive satisfaction and we should be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. As you say, over 25 years of my experience in business carrying out these surveys, it always comes back to similar things, no matter what industry vertical we're looking at, no matter the size of company. Make it easy to do business, make it easy for customers to interact with you, that accessibility, whether it's, online or offline, the language that you use, you don't make things difficult, make it convenient. And the response times as well, in this fast moving world that we're in, customers expect everything as quickly as possible. So, but all the while, I think, understanding that mistakes will happen. We can't be perfect all the time. And so making sure that, when you do deal with a customer, that you do it with empathy as well. And, that will turn the situation around, hopefully, and make them come back to you in the future.
And Nick, that takes us back to our starting point when you said, why maybe are we getting lower levels of satisfaction? If there was a problem with quality, if there was a problem with price, one of these tangible issues, it's easy to get a grip of that and somebody to say, well, we need to improve our quality, we need to improve our price. But if you're going to improve ease of doing business, how do you do that? It might need doing something completely different, supplying the customer in a completely different way. It isn't easy to make it easy for people to do business. So those intangibles, like the soft service, it isn't just a question of saying have a nice day, but making people smile and being friendly are more difficult to change than to improve the quality.
Yeah, and I think I bank with NatWest. I think they're great in terms of the app that I use and how we do that. But Jesus, I tried to open 2 accounts for my sons the other day. You need to do it all online. It didn't work with the facial recognition. Went in branch, they couldn't do it. They couldn't just fill in a form. It was just the most painful thing, and it's been dragged out over the course of weeks. So it's these little touch points that really do make you sour in terms of towards a brand and the experience that you get.
Well, that's why a government department like the driver licensing department can actually do quite well in customer satisfaction, because you used to have to go into an office to get your license, your car license replaced. But now you can do it over the phone or on the internet in no time at all. They've made it easy. Making things easy will improve customer satisfaction, but it isn't always easy to do that. It's not always easy to make things easy.
So if you could suggest just one thing that could improve customer satisfaction within a company, what would that be?
Well, I think I'd like to suggest it was understanding the customer. If you understood the customer, then you will be able to deliver great customer satisfaction. But we've got to go back to commitment. We've got to say that the number one requirement within any organisation is to get commitment at the top. Well, once you've got that commitment, you've got to deliver against the expectations of the customer. If you need fulfillment, in other words, you've got to be able to deliver that. And then you need to make things seamless and easy. We've just been talking about how important that is in delivering customer satisfaction. So we've already mentioned more than one thing. We've said it's commitment, it's fulfillment, it's seamless, it's making things easy. And customers' expectations are constantly changing. So you've also got to be ahead of the curve in terms of what's the next thing we should be doing. Almost prophesying or thinking about what the next requirement is going to be of the customer and delivering it before they even know they need it. So it isn't easy to do customer satisfaction. It's not one thing that we can say there's tick that box and you'll have done it. There's a few things you need there, and you need it at the top.
Yeah, you do. And I agree with all that. I mean, I suppose the starting point is ask the customer, how are you doing? What could we do better? You need to be market orientated if you're always looking to deliver against market needs, and you won't go far wrong there. But then what you've talked about there is various different pillars that actually are in our book, B2B customer experience. So, in terms of where you should go, one thing that you should do to improve customer satisfaction, seek out that book. And if you don't want to invest in the book, then there's always B2B frameworks.
Look at the frameworks. Go to the website. It's free.
It is. Thanks for joining me today, Paul.
Thanks, Nick.